The last weekend of October 2019 I visited the Austrian province, in fact the Alpine province of Tyrol, where I have acquaintances and relatives. Well, that's no coincidence. I spent the first years of my life there, which means I will always call this country my home. The very place where you spent the first 15 to 20 years of your life is your home. Deine Heimat. No matter where you move later on in life, no matter if you change your citizenship, it is also that language, that dialect you never get rid of, you will never forget. In the background there is a collage with pictures from the Alpine province, which I took during my recent visits. You might think I was driving around in the country looking for beautiful motifs. But the pictures were taken during walks with friends and family. At first glance, there's still an ideal world in Tyrol, but behind the scenes the beautiful facade is crumbling. The main reason is probably the inevitable social transition. It is just happening too fast. This turbulent social transition has turned almost everything upside down. In these farming villages, people live mainly from tourism. Recently, many villages and the landscape have been greatly challenged by tourism, mostly beyond recognition. Giant hotels and ski resorts and large water dams. As I heard the other day, mass tourism destroys more sustainably than war. What has probably changed the most since my youth is the demography. Until the 1980s, or maybe rather the 1970s, families had an average of 4 children, often more. But today, it's 1 or 2. That's the average. Rarely there are 3. So it is the same situation as it is in the European cities. The farms then could hardly have been run in the old days with so few children. Their manpower was essential. Today there is no difference in fertility between city and countryside anymore. On the contrary, now in the cities the birth rate is higher due to the migration. When the rural youth moves to the cities today, they are missing in the countryside. Rural youth. It's almost not to pronounce for a German speaker. Rural youth. Well, that's very, very tough. Rural youth. In the small villages, however, migration is not yet an issue. It would also be less noticeable, since most villages have more hotel beds than inhabitants. But it's not exactly like that. In the larger towns, however, there are already problems due to the mass immigration from outside Europe. Within the last few years, 2 young locals have been stabbed to death by immigrants. The prison sentences for such murders are usually ridiculously low in Austria. Which leads us to another problem. How does a society deal with it when the 4th child of an immigrant family kills the only child of another family? Well, I have no answer for this question. But what struck me most was that almost all people under the age of, let's say, 60 I have met during my visit have developed a hatred towards the Catholic Church. I met a childlike hatred, an irrational hatred. It seems to me that this hatred becomes stronger with every year. I don't know how this all came about. Revealingly, however, I have heard someone say that the religious programs of our state media, especially the television ORF, he said they are made by haters of Christianity for haters of Christianity. Von Christenhassern für Christenhasser. Of course, naturally, subtle and cleverly done. Constant dripping wears away the stone, steht der Tropfen hüllt den Stein. In Tyrol, however, senior citizens in particular are often still very religious and go to church every Sunday, often even more frequently. And the church was full during last week's Sunday service, which I attended. This might have been a coincidence. Why? A young priest from Bavaria, his name was Corbinian, a name that seems to exist only in Bavaria, had one of his first masses, seine Nachprimitz. The actual priest of the place, a Polish guy, did not have to do much this day. A problem of these Catholic communities in the countryside is that today they often get foreign priests. They may be very committed, but they are often difficult to understand. It is mainly a language problem. And this young German priest gave an intelligent sermon. He explained the gospel, and he did it wisely. And that's the way it should be, I think. During one of my last visits, the priest preferred to make the parish feel guilty about the refugee crisis. I could barely hide my contempt. Which leads me to the political attitude of the people of my old homeland. Most of the people with whom I talked are politically left-wing and ostentatiously migration-friendly and socially progressive. One elderly acquaintance of mine is waiting eagerly for the Catholic Church to allow female priests. And my former childminder, also at least 70 years old, praised the Quran for its exemplary role in the treatment of women in polygamy. And I'm not joking here. In the last national election, just 1 month ago, the Conservative Party, die Österreichische Volkspartei, received 46% of the vote in this province. The Social Democrats, as per traditionally weak there, they only gained 13%, and the Green Party, notoriously hostile to Austria, got 15% because they are very popular at the moment. And the migration-critical FPÖ, they also got 15%. They have lost 10% compared to the last elections 2 years ago. To be honest, there are several parallel campaigns against the Freedom Party before each elections. This is how fair Austria is in 2019. In my opinion, the constituents of the ÖVP and the Green Party are ideologically very similar. The older people vote for the People's Party, ÖVP. The so-called conservatives, the younger ones, vote for the Green Party, which are extremely supported by the media in Austria and Germany at the moment. And at the moment, everything looks like a collision between the People's Party and the Greens. The former and probably new federal chancellor Sebastian Kurz is very popular everywhere and also in Tyrol. In my humble opinion, he is a marketing product. But the people who live in the countryside feel that they are in safe hands with him. Well, little do they know, these poor victims of the all-encompassing propaganda. In recent years, the ÖVP, the People's Party, has mastered how to give its voters the feeling that they take care about the problems of especially illegal mass immigration and internal security. They pretend to be a law and order party. In fact, they have done little or nothing. But when the media all over the country writes that Sebastian Kurz is a friendly right-wing populist who wants to protect his people, most people believe that. Of course, he's just a clever globalist in disguise of a populist. Anyway, the people in Tyrol are busy working on their farms. They only run them because of a small additional earnings. And also by tradition, at least as long as the older generation is around. It must be added that these part-time farmers are in love with their agricultural machinery. In addition to a normal tractor, they have a mowing tractor and small excavator often, as well as countless smaller agricultural engines. For a little farm, that is not profitable. I think many men enjoy operating these machines quite a lot. It is an expensive hobby though. Those farmers do get a few thousand euros from the EU for the preservation of the countryside per year. We call it Landschaftspflege. Money that the Austrian taxpayer previously transferred to Brussels in even larger amounts, since we are a net contributor to the EU. Those people with no farm build houses for children they don't have. Or they expand their hotels before winter. In autumn, Tyrolean mountain villages are covered with cranes. It can be said that the Austrian Alps are concreted over, gradually. A few decades ago, there were still very few shopping facilities for families with then many children. How could they feed those kids then, I sometimes ask myself. Today, however, every larger village is equipped with several well-stocked supermarkets with huge parking lots in front of them. The supermarkets are mostly the well-known big German companies. The profit therefore is transferred abroad. Nevertheless, the Tyroleans are not yet fat, I noticed. Even though they otherwise suffer from all the mental civilization diseases of today, some of which they don't even recognize.